behaviors is with St. Anthony of Padua. He was trying to convert heretics, and he'd been working with this one heretic for quite some time. And the heretic said, well, I can believe everything you've taught me about the Catholic faith except for one thing. I can't possibly believe that Jesus would make himself present in this little wafer of bread. So they entered this agreement whereby they locked up the mule that belonged to the heretic in the barn for 3 days with no food. All right, young man back there, how hungry would you be if your parents didn't feed you for 3 days? How hungry would you be? You don't know. I think I'd be pretty hungry. So, after the end of 3 days, they let that mule out of the barn, and the heretic is there with water to feed his mule, but St. Anthony is there with the Blessed Sacrament and the monstrance. And that mule came out of the barn, ignored the food, and went over and knelt in adoration before the Blessed Sacrament. So that heretic ended up becoming a very zealous convert to the Catholic faith. So the most famous Eucharistic miracle, one that's undergone the greatest amount of scientific study, is one that took place around the year 750 in Lanciano in Italy. And it began with a doubting priest. At the moment of the consecration, the bread turned into flesh and the wine turned into blood. And everyone who was there that day witnessed this miracle as it took place. And that flesh remains intact to this very day. Now, my wife and I were there on a Eucharistic Miracles tour. And nearly everybody in our tour group were Catholic couples, with the exception of this one Protestant minister and his wife. And after we attended Mass in the chapel behind where the monstrance was, we came out and we made a circle around the monstrance. And this minister's wife began to say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And then she started to sob, and her sobs became more and more intense, and she got to the point where she couldn't even stand anymore. So we sat her down in the pew, and her husband and I went off. We found a wheelchair, collected her, wheeled it off to the area where our bus was. And it took us about an hour to calm her down to the point where we could get her back on the bus and resume our tour that day. She was so moved at having been in the presence of the sacred species associated with this miracle. Now the blood actually coagulated into 5 parts. You can see that there, the 5 parts. It's human blood, type AB. What was particularly unusual about it is that when they weighed those 5 lumps of blood, it didn't matter which of the lumps they weighed, or if they weighed all 5 together, or any combination of 2, 3, or 4, they would get exactly the same weight. Well, that sounds rather impossible, but Archbishop Rodriguez explained this phenomena. He said, well, Christ is totally present in the tiniest fragment of consecrated host and in the smallest drop of consecrated wine. Now, the host itself transformed into what you see here. There are no preservatives. That flesh is human myocardium, the left ventricle of the human heart. It has all the arteries, the veins, vagus nerve, everything you would expect to find in a slice through that area of the heart. When I think about the host changing into heart tissue, it reminds me of the prophecy of Ezekiel in which we find, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. As you're about to hear, this type of miracle, the host changing into heart tissue, is happening in town after town after town as we sit here today. This miracle took place in Buenos Aires in Argentina. It began with a discarded host that was found.